Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. We are talking about the inauguration ceremony, the 6th elective term for President Museveni as he gets to take on another 5-year tenure until 2026. So what are some of the achievements that have been garnered since 1986 up to date? What are some of those insufficiencies? Why has the president shifted goalposts when it comes to his resignation? You have people like General Katumba Edward who are saying, I will be retiring because, you know, after some point, you need to vacate positions of power and let other people take over. But President Museveni is having none of that. He says, as long as the people of Uganda ask me to participate in this electoral process, I shall continue making myself available. He says he's still here because the people want him to participate. I have Captain Francis Babu and I also have Godbert Mushabe, the Associate Director, Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. A very good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, let me just kickstart with that very contentious upbeat where the president has been shifting in goalposts when it comes to his retirement. Godbert Mushabe, 1980. He said the only problem in Africa are leaders who cling onto power against the wishes of the masses. 1986, he reiterated the same. 2001, he said the same. I'm not coming in 2006. We saw the removal of term limits. 2012, we told him, okay, you're clocking 75 soon. Will you actually orchestrate the removal of age limit? He said, no, you are weaker if you're above 75. But then 2017, when he asked him the same, he said, well, we are going to be moving forward. We shall not be diverted by diversions. So that's where we are. Why has the president kept on shifting his narrative on resignation or retirement?
I would say probably I think that's what probably he meant from the very beginning. Most likely we didn't read him because like we've said time and again, one of the biggest challenges that we have as a people, as Africans, is that we don't do research. That in most cases we don't invest in understanding the people, the people that lead us. So Captain Francis Babu will be appointed a minister, but we never go back to see who is Captain Francis Babu, because if we do research and profile these people and see the things they have done, then we begin even to project what is the policy posture that is likely to to bring into a new ministry. So even with President Museveni and all the other leaders, including, for example, these people who stand on opposition tickets, we don't invest much in understanding who are they. Someone like Remio just wakes up and say, I want to be president, and then we all run around the person without knowing who he is. So I think that we never invested enough in understanding President Museveni. When you go into the history, you look at what he has written. When you read his writings, you actually begin to understand the president and who he is. I remember reading the mustard seed, sowing the mustard seed. One of the interesting statements I found there is where President Museveni is questioning and saying that he did not understand why people like Rugumayo, like Nabudere, that gang of four, that how people who didn't have fighting forces, what they should have been doing in Arusha, in Moshi. So in other words, you begin to see this is a man who has been militaristic for a long time, that his entire posture depends on the military. So when he came 1986 and delivered his famous fundamental change speech, those of us who were around and could understand, you saw a dawn of a new era, because we were coming from a situation where you have a crisis in terms of security. The economy was basically in the tank. So he comes in with the UPDF, a fairly disciplined army. We didn't know much of the atrocities that have been they had perpetuated in the war. The data about how many people had died in the war, because now the figure ranges from 500,000, around 500,000. That research is not there. All we see is a president who comes with the military, swears in, promises a fundamental change. In a way, for most parts of the country, there is establishment of stability and security. save for areas in northern Uganda and eastern Uganda that remained under insurgency. So really there is a sense of optimism. Of course, he promises to rule for 4 years. The group promises to rule for 4 years. And then after 4 years are over, then we begin the shifting of the goalposts. So when you look at the history of President Museveni and his NRM group, you can draw about 2 major conclusions. One is what I've said time and again, that if you read President Museveni's posture, his mental programming is that he's a life president. So there must be something exceptional that all of a sudden shifts him to think otherwise.
He says during the 2016 campaigns, he said he cannot vacate a plantation when what he planted is starting to bear fruit. That's what he mentioned.
Now, I think there's a possibility that his peers like Captain Babu and others could look at the crisis that we are facing, because the many people around President Museveni don't realize that as a country we are faced with a crisis. And we can talk about the nature of the crisis. My view is that there is a likelihood that some of his peers who understand him, who are very patriotic, by the way, because I know Captain Francis Babu and a couple of others who feel for this country. Indeed. Yeah, beyond their NRM-ish, because most people who are NRM basically think that the only good thing that has ever happened to Uganda is something called NRM, even when they don't understand it, by the way. So there is a possibility that his peers could actually talk to him and say, Muze, this thing, we can actually build this country better. We've built the foundation.
All right, thank you very
much. For
intents
intents and purposes, they have done what they can do. But we have to move into the future, and I don't think that they are the ones who move into the future without the rest of Ugandans.
Okay, one of the strongmen who tried to talk to President Museveni was Amanya Mushega in 2020. In an interview with NTV, Captain Francis Babu, he said that as people who brought NRM into power, they will not tire when it comes to telling President Museveni that he could actually have to resign when it comes to politics in this country. To
no, retire, not resign, probably.
Retire. He has to retire as far as politics in this country is concerned. But then President Museveni says Africa and Uganda in particular have so many challenges that he needs to address. Is that the reason why President Museveni is still here?
No, I've got a problem, and the problem is the narratives everybody's got, the problems of this country, and putting President Museveni on the side, we've got to look at this country in a little different perspective.
Indeed.
I prefer to look at Uganda and its problems.
Indeed.
And I find that there is a lot of prescriptions by a lot of experts on what Uganda should be and what Museveni should be. I think we should...
Too many doctors, one patient.
That's right. We have too many people who have got a lot of prescription. Let's do this, let's do that. And one does not sit down to think. First of all, for me, I believe very strongly this country is not united.
I hear you.
We need to unite this country. A lot of you talk about democracy, but you're talking about liberal American, British, European democracy. You do not talk about your own country. Indeed. Now, I have got a very strong belief that the problem is not even Museveni, it's all of us. We have not understood that this country, first and foremost, unlike countries like Tanzania, we have never had a leader who united it. First, if you unite this country, then democracy prevails. If you don't unite this country, then you will not have democracy. And therefore, people who have got different agendas prevail in such an atmosphere. So let's go back now.
All right.
From the time we got independence onwards, this has been a merry-go-round. And a lot of our educated class, and I'm sorry, I want to put every educated man in the dock, in a court, because you are giving wrong prescriptions.
Please do, go ahead.
One, yes, we're all giving wrong prescription. President Museveni himself in the dock. All of you in the dock.
Yes.
Why? Because you've not gone to the fundamental of the problems of this country.
And what could that be?
The problem is you must get the people united in this country. Amazing. First and foremost. We are all, in fact, until today, right now as we talk, people still believe in tribes, people still believe in religion, people still believe in regions, people still believe in all sorts of things. Now there's a new narrative of young and old.
Yes.
And I laugh, because at independence, all the people in our leadership were young. The people who removed, when Amin went over, he was young.
Indeed.
When President Museveni came with these people, he was young. When we were in parliament here, there's something called young parliamentarians, then there was something called the PAFO. We've had young people. So this is nothing new. So our analysis is wrong. So to get President Museveni, because he believes, that because of this weakness that we have in the country, and he's taking advantage of that, some of you have now developed a narrative. He must go, he must retire. Now, a lot of things now come into question. Why is he doing what he's doing? Why? Nobody has answered that question, apart from saying he wants to be a life president. But he's not the first one to stay in that place without going. In the whole of East Africa, we've had other leaders who have stayed there, but for them, they achieved what they wanted and they left the stage. For example, Nyerere did not live in two-term limit. No, he left after some years, but he built the country to unity and then started democracy. And you can see the democracy has taken root in Tanzania. Now, how do we build this country? All of us. Instead of criticizing, I want two things. And the other day I had a professor from Tanzania who really impressed me. He talked about two types of democracy. He said, we are tired of democracy of power. We want democracy of development.
Amazing.
Now, you see, I am a little bit perturbed. Is that whilst I like President Museveni to retire with a little bit of respect and tell him, Mr. President, I think you've done this and that, some of the people who are now talking about him were with him when they talked about the 4 years. They were with him when they talked about 1995 Constitution. They are with him until they started going off after forming, thinking that they could use other methods to ask him to retire. I think time has come. I don't think we should wait until the president goes. We should ask him, Mr. President, time has come. You've done a very good job. You've told us all sorts of things. I'm not even going to accuse him like other people do. Please, Mr. President, time has come so that we can have a transition, a real transition, not transition from the president to the same president, but a real transition. And this can be done by also producing better leaders. You talked about leaders.
Yes, sir.
And my brother here was talking about leaders, finding out about this leader. We've got a lot of good leaders. We are 43 million. People should not tell you lies that we don't have leaders. Even the other day when I saw people pulling and pushing in Parliament for Speaker, we have 527 members of Parliament. Out of that, we've got members who can be speakers. So
politics of power.
So we leave politics of power and go on politics of development and then love our country by uniting it. This is the only answer.
Thank you very much, Captain Francis Babu. What do you make of that, Godbetu Mushari? That is a shift in narrative from Captain Francis Babu. He also believes President Museveni, actually it is time for him to actually talk about retirement. I
actually don't think that it's a shift in narrative. I think that I think it's a different way of almost talking about the same thing. I totally agree with Captain Babu that one is that we are not a united country. I think that, and I have said this time and again, I've argued and said, if President Museveni was to make any additional contribution in this country, it's not about building bridges and building roads and building dams. It's about using his goodwill and his so many years of experience to pull this country together. And basically say, you guys, for us we have a group called NRM. There are people who don't agree with us.
What is that English expression? Bingo.
Bingo. Yeah. So there are people who don't believe us, who don't agree with us, but they are Ugandans. We have our religions. I actually, Captain Babu, I actually believe that we can have our different religions. We can even worship our tribes. We can have, we can come from professional backgrounds, but I think there is a possibility. It's possible to find a common Ugandan agenda.
The difference between me and you there, we can use them to unite the country. But we should not use them to divide the country.
No. He's saying that the president is banking on the disunity. Do you also believe the same?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, I actually think, the studies I've been looking at, because in 2007 I looked at studies because I looked at a number of things because there is a whole lot of talk by President Museveni and NRM people saying Uganda is, the past leaders were tribal. They were ethnic. They were ethnic based. And I went back to 1962 and looked at how did the different leaders use tribalism and other ethnic and other diversities to actually rule over Uganda. And so when you come to, you see, Amin really is one of those people that you could say was tribal because of the way he had constituted his government. You begin to see elements of it during Obote II government.
Indeed.
But when you come to NRM, the entire government is constructed around different diversities. So even in, you remember in 1996, Captain, that's the only election where I participated in supporting President Museveni.
Yes.
Immediately after the elections, I always tell Ugandans that President Museveni engineered the first amendment to the Ugandan constitution before its first anniversary. And what was it about? It was to go to parliament to ask to increase cabinet, because the parliament, the constitution had capped the number of cabinet ministers. So before he could even appoint the ministers that were prescribed by the constitution, he sent the then Vice President, Spichoza Kazibwe, to ask Parliament to pass a resolution to increase the cap on the ministers. That was before the Constitution's first anniversary. And his main argument, if you go back to the Hansards, Dr. Kazibwe was basically saying that the president needed to reward his constituencies. And the constituencies are basically looking at the religious communities that supported him, the tribal communities, and others. So essentially, for all this time, President Museveni talks about sectarianism and tribalism, but actually he plays the same game like everybody else. And I think the point that we are trying to make,
supporting Chagulanyi,
yeah,
the
point we are trying to make is that I think I have argued time and again. I say I can be a proud Ugandan Munyankore.
I hear you.
I can be a proud Ugandan Muganda. I don't think that any one of us should apologize for coming from these ethnicities, because we never chose. I never chose to be born in Munyankore.
Indeed.
You know, someone doesn't choose to be born an Acholi. But these are our ethnicities, and I think we can proudly belong to these ethnicities and be patriotic Ugandans. What you need is a leadership that says all this cultural heritage that we have, that is founded on our tribes, can actually be harnessed to be able to bring our country together and focus on a bigger idea. Because Ankole is too small for me to be worried about Ankole.
Captain Francis Babu, you have Associate Professor Don William, that is Don William Muhumuza from the School of Social Sciences, Makerere University. He said President Museveni's determination to retain power in a pseudo-democratic dispensation has culminated into many undemocratic activities. One of them being that we are heading into inauguration today, but you have opposition candidates like Kizza Besigye, you have Robert Chagulanyi, they've had their residences surrounded, and 40 other people have been arrested. Now, wouldn't it make the narrative by William Muhumuza right when he says that President Museveni's determination to retain power in a pseudo-democratic dispensation has culminated in so many undemocratic activities like what we are seeing right now?
No, I don't think so. I think we create fear sometimes.
All right.
And when we create fear, we have intelligence organization running a government. The problem is Ugandans have never understood that you have a state.
Indeed.
And the state is run basically on security, and security has got a lot of different facets. Now, if the security believes there's going to be a little bit of a problem, they look for prescriptions. They might be looking for wrong prescription, but those are the prescription of the security. Now, remember, we have a lot of visitors here.
Indeed.
So many presidents I was reading on the social media who have come here. You don't want to shame yourself in front of these presidents. And
Famaji has gotten a problem in Uganda.
Let's be frank to each other.
Indeed.
I think a lot of people are not frank to each other.
Indeed.
Now, security says, look, sir, there are people who want to create a little bit of problem. It says, who? So and so. I say, okay, what are the prescriptions? This is what we're going to do. Now, to you, an ordinary person, it doesn't appear to be very healthy. But to the security organization, they've done their job. And let me tell you, nobody will allow other presidents to be here without providing very tight security. Now, apart from that, and I like what my brother said, I'm happy you are talking exactly my language. We have failed to use the vectors of forces in the different tribes and religion. And for example, if you asked me today, how would you connect the valences of the different tribes, you know, put them together so that we are all one. That is something I want done. I want this country. There are people who went to school and they say the problem of Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya is these traditional rulers. Get rid of them. There are people who believe that. Now that is wrong. We never used that force to try and create a Uganda where everybody is happy. There are people who just came out and said, we don't want traditional rulers, we don't want religion, and then new religions come up, all sorts of, then you say you don't want, to know that you have been brainwashed. You don't even believe in your native spiritual leaders. You know, people think that anything native, spiritual leaders, they are all negative. But there are two forces in every religion, the good and the bad. And the traditional leaders, the spiritual leaders are there. Now, I've seen people here actually go and burn, you know, where the traditional leaders go to do their rituals, which I think is totally wrong. Now, that shows you that we are brainwashed. We must understand, not all traditional spiritual leaders are witches.
Indeed.
Okay? So we must be able to separate that. Now, the reason I'm saying this, we have failed to understand ourselves. We have become Mzungus. Either you're from London or you're from America. Like PLO says, when you're sick, you go to hospitals in London. When you're sick, you go to hospitals in America. When you're sick, nowadays you go to India, and the Arabs have even done it better. We now go to Dubai. Now, we have not understood that Uganda can, for example, have the best hospitals, and people can have medical tourism here.
Indeed.
We have the best doctors. We have a very good medical school. We have not used it. We are here fighting for power. Power, which power? We don't even have power. We are a poor country. We are a poor country.
Go ahead, sir.
That needs to exploit the mineral resources we have so that we can build this country, so that our people can have a better standard of living. Now, all these things said and done, I don't want to waste my time. President Museveni, go retire. No. Mr. President Museveni, to make this country better, you are not above Uganda. Uganda is above you. How do we make Uganda better? My friend has put it nicely. Can he use his time now to unite this country? And hasten and say, now, I've united, now it's my time to go. So and so, please, listen. And by the way, why are you asking President Museveni to give you a leader? The leaders who are going to rule this country are going to emerge. If a cow can get a leader to go and drink water,
Yes.
I hear you. All right.
leaders are going to emerge in this country, whether you like it or not.
Godberto Mushabe, is a transition a feasible idea now that we are talking about a transition from President Museveni to someone else? And according to the political atmosphere and what we are seeing right now, is it feasible to have a transition from President Yoweri Museveni? Even though NRM cadres are adamant and they are saying, if he is a winning candidate, we shall back him, even 100 times.
No, first of all, we have to understand the transition must happen. By whatever means, there is no way you can even ask whether it is feasible or not. I think what Captain Babu and I are talking about is what kind of transition.
That's right.
Because I can tell you that a very unstable transition from President Museveni to another leader does not work for me as a Ugandan.
No.
Yeah, I want an organized transition that actually the transition process can be harnessed to create the unity that we're talking about, depending on how you handle it. So my own reading is that I think Captain Babu Aria talked about giving wrong prescriptions.
Yes.
I strongly believe, having studied our electoral process and the way the electoral system has been severely distorted,
Yes.
I am one of those people who believe that unless a miracle happens, we cannot have a transition of power from President Museveni to another leader through an election. Because you see, you can look at from 1996 the first elections under the 1995 constitution we have, we have had all elections degenerate to a point where we are swearing in a president who has been elected in an election where more than 100 people are killed, hundreds others in jail. I don't think that as a country we need that kind of election. Because if, yeah, I think Captain Babu brings a very good example of cows. Cows, it's reached the time for watering. You find the move.
Yes, there's a leader.
They follow a leader. If we as a people, as Ugandans, some of us we have been fortunate to be very highly educated. People like Captain Babu and others have a lot of exposure. They have been around for a while. They know the history of this country so much. You know, others are young people, but they have exposure. I don't understand how we are failing as a people to get together and say we don't want an election where people die for someone to be president. Whether that person is President Museveni or Captain Babu or Godba. We don't need an election where people die for someone to be president. And that's why we need to challenge ourselves more. But otherwise, I can predict, and I've said this time and again, that an election today, where President Museveni is a candidate, is basically a recipe for violence. You'll see it happen. You've seen it right from 2001, because our security forces, and you know, God bless them, these are people who do a lot of work. They sacrifice a lot to, you know, to keep this country secure. But our security infrastructure has been programmed around protecting the president, protecting NRM people, and then Uganda. Because that's what you see in practice. We know the mission of security forces. We know the constitutional role of security forces. So if I was to speak as an academic, I can just explain, oh, you know, the military, the UPDF, its main preoccupation is to secure the borders of Uganda and protect our sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Captain Francis,
yes.
Exhausted.
No, I was just saying, you know, and Captain Babu's talks really very accurate about we have leaders, we need security, we don't need to show our dirt to the foreigners.
All right, we're talking about the transition, Godberto Museveni and Captain Francis Babu, but you said we cannot get assured that there will be a transition through elections.
No, I'm not sure that we can have...
So that's what I want to task Captain Francis Babu on. So what kind of transition are we talking about if we cannot get it through an election? That's why I was talking about the feasibility of a transition from President Museveni to someone else. Here's someone who said in the 2016 campaigns that, you know what, how do I get out of a plantation when my fruits that I planted are just bearing fruit? In 2025, that's when we shall start commercialize oil production. So would you expect President Museveni to vacate the office?
Maybe that's where our problem is. What method should we use to ask His Excellency to retire? Maybe the methods which have been used up to now seem to conflict.
Indeed.
And they do not help us. So we sit down. How can President Museveni get out of his... how can he retire?
Peacefully and in a dignified manner.
Can he retire by the methods which you're using, by attacking Parliament, by the opposition using methods of social media to
threatening him, threatening him that they'll jail him?
Yeah, and somebody going to pray that he should die tomorrow. Are those the methods that are good?
Not such fact.
So when you sit down...
They only lead to consolidation.
When you sit down, the security forces are not really defending Museveni as they're defending a country and the presidency.
Indeed.
Now, there has been a misunderstanding on security. I keep telling you, please let's study what security, how it works. First of all, there's police. Police, they're about 45,000.
One police officer about 900.
If you divide it, one policeman looks after about 1,000 people. Then the police cannot look after one policeman cannot look after 1,000.
It's impossible.
So you need to have another security to help. This country has not built another security. Unlike our country, there is a country next door to us. They built a police. When they realized they might have riots, they built something called GSU. Then they built the army. All right? There is a special police that comes in when you have riots, well trained to do that job. But it is really rough.
But instead here we saw the SFC coming out.
No, CFC it's protecting the presidency.
But then we saw them during the
That's
November
their job.
riots.
That's their job, to protect the presidency, whether you like it or not.
So is that what you mean, that we need a special police for?
No, we
such
need to
police?
sit down and find a method how we can ask, if possible, convince, if not possible, how do we have a dialogue where the president, time has come, sir, that you retire. You've done a very good job. I've seen your securing our future. But as you secure our future, time has come, Mr. President, to give that future to somebody else so that he can move on. Now, we need to sit down. Now, President Museveni, being asked many times, have you discussed this in the NRM? No, we've never discussed it. Why? Haven't you discussed it in your party? This is something very important. In fact, it is the center of, if you like, that's where the strength is.
Yes.
We need to look at that. How do we discuss it? Start with your party. Start with the elders in this country. Start with the religious leaders. Start with the traditional rulers. Talk to different people. Let's see if we can find a solution to this. And you live with dignity, Mr. President. We still have a lot of respect for you. Time is for you to live with dignity and let the stage, create a stage where the new leaders will not have the same problems like you've had.
Yeah.
So, Captain Francis Babu, the prescription is dialogue. Talk to the president.
That's right.
A prescription that has failed time and again.
It has not failed yet. I never give up.
Incidentally, with the dialogue, you don't give up.
No.
It doesn't even happen overnight.
You continue pulling the strings.
And let me tell you that after 2016 elections,
Yes.
I was deeply involved in the electoral process, supporting the TD. I was a technical advisor to the Democratic Alliance. And I saw the crisis that this country was plunged into. Because I don't believe that you should have an election where after the election, both the loser and the winner cannot celebrate anything.
Yes.
No, that's not an election. You have an election.
And but we've had one in America.
Yeah.
Good point.
I disagree with the comparison because they are completely far apart. But secondly, we had the elections where on the night of the announcement of the results, you have the military take over Kampala and other cities. In effect, you are saying this is a situation where you have a coup. That's how you see the military. Yeah, when the military is deployed, and Captain Babu can argue and say, "Oh, this is securing the presidency."
According to government, they were saying they were responding to threats that.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That if after almost 60 years of independence, that's what you get after an election, then you need to go sit back and say, "Is this really what we want after 60 years of independence?" Because that means that you are dealing with existential problems. Yeah, you have won an election. Those people who voted for you, they are hiding. Those who voted against you, they are all hiding. All of us are hiding from the security forces.
Are those tenets of a multi-party dispensation?
Not at all, not at all. But the point I wanted to make is that after those elections, I was convinced that we needed to put more levers and energy in bringing about a national dialogue. And good enough that the religious leaders were working on this effort. So